I'm Spook Spann.
And I'm Brian Stevens.
Welcome to the 11th Commandment,
a podcast about how chasing big whitetails has become a religion to us. The plan is to get into the head of one of the most successful whitetail hunters on the planet
and to share over 40 plus years of hunting experience with you. Big bucks, life, and America. Here we go.
Welcome to the 11th Commandment, brought to you by Spook Nation. I'm Brian Stevens here with Spook. And Spook, we have got a very special guest today that I'm going to turn over to you and let you introduce and have a great time today.
Yeah, I'm really excited. He's one of my best friends in the hunting world, and we've had a lot of fun together through the years. There's not enough good things I can say about this guy. He's a great father, a great Christian man, and I know and love his boys to death also. And he's probably the best storyteller I've ever hunted with, even better than Slim. And he's known as one of the best, most well-known bass fishermen in the history of, bass masters and all that, those things. And one of the reasons that's kind of cool to me is my dad was just loved bass fishing. So I grew up bass fishing. My dad used to get the Bass Masters magazine all the time. And so, I've known of Hank for a long time. And Hank is, probably best known for his bass fishing accolades. But his true passion and love, believe it or not, is actually hunting. I think he tries to make enough money bass fishing so he can go hunting. And but we've had a good time. Hank's the one that talked me into. I used to think that you had to shoot a fixed blade broadhead, and I shot thunderheads for years. And Hank is the one that got me switched over to Swacker years ago, and have loved it. And so we've done a lot of stuff together. But to one of the finest people in the world, and especially in the industry, my good buddy Hank Parker.
Hello, Spook, buddy. I tell you, you remember the first time that I met you and Mark Hatcher up at Big Buck Country, Big Buck Farms.
Yeah.
Wanted to host veterans, and y'all went so much out of your way to bring our servicemen in and show them a good time on a turkey hunt. And I admired both of you guys so much for that. You spent a lot of money, spent a lot of time, and went to a lot of effort to show appreciation to our veterans. And that was the foundation that our friendship was built on. And I was so impressed that how kind you guys, both you and Mark, were to our veterans. And so that impressed me, and that's where our friendship started. Man, you were just a kid, and I was a whole lot younger, but time goes on.
Well, Spook, if you remember, you had invited Mark and myself after we had started working together. Hank, you may or may not remember, I don't remember what year it was. Maybe it would have been 12 or 13, 14, but my brother is a retired special operations operator, and Spook invited us to participate. And
that was the second year, Hank.
The second year.
Yeah.
And spent some time with your boys, and I ended up shooting, I think, one of the biggest birds, and everybody was frustrated at me because they had such big hooks. But it was an awesome event, and we were very impressed of what Spook did, and appreciative that he invited my brother and I to be a part of it.
That is so awesome, and it was so much good times, and to see those soldiers. A lot of things happen to guys that are deployed, and they see a lot of bad stuff, and they just don't have a lot of great moments. And when somebody like Spook will take their time and set it up, and it was such a beautiful lodge and a place, and we housed them, and man, it was just a really great time, and it was impressive. And those guys had a ball. I still see some of them from time to time up around Fort Campbell, and they all have wonderful, fond memories of those days at, what was that, Big Buck Farms? Is that what it was called?
Yes, correct. Yep.
Yeah, they have fond memories of Big Buck Farm.
Yeah, you hunted there with us quite a bit and killed some really nice deer with us. That was a lot of fun. I ran into one of those. So I hosted the first ever Big Buck Classic in Kansas sometime after that. And there was a guy walked through the door with his family, you know, and he walked up, and Marty was with me in the booth at that show. And he introduced himself, said, "Do you remember me?" And I said, "Yeah, I recognize your face. I just don't remember your name." He said, "I'm Soldier." He gave his name. He said, "You took me the first year on the big buck games turkey hunting." And I was like, yeah, man, how you doing? He said, "Man," he said, "I am doing great." He said, "I just want you to know that you saved my life."
Wow.
He said, I was truly on the edge of not knowing whether I wanted to even live anymore or not. And you took me turkey hunting, and I remember this guy made a heck of a shot on about a 55-yard shot on the gobbler. I could tell the gobbler was done. You know, he just started that. You know, he started that. I said, "Shoot him," you know, and he whacked him. It was awesome. But he said, "Man, he said I felt like I had something to live for. You know, I started turkey hunting, started deer hunting." He said, "I got a job. I met this wonderful lady. We got married. We've had kids." He said, I know it sounds kind of corny, but he said it really was the time that changed my life." And Marty was sitting there listening to it, and it's hard for me to tell it without crying, you know, because it was so emotional.
Yeah.
And, you know, just that one thing, not that it wasn't all worth it regardless, but that one thing just made it all, you know, hugely gratifying. But those guys really appreciated it. I mean, they, you know, it was really awesome because people like Hank and other celebrities and celebrity ball players came in, and everybody was so great to those guys. I mean, made them feel like, which they are, the most special people in the world after everything that they've given to us. And so just to be a part of it was awesome. And Hank was always a big part of it. He and the boys helped us with whatever it was we needed and always came. And so, yeah, it was there. And that was awesome having Brian and Mark there the next year. Mark is an extremely decorated, you know, fairly famous soldier that's done a lot of incredible stuff. And we're going to have him on here soon. But he's been involved in a lot of big time ops. I hope we can get him to talk about some of it on the show.
Yeah, that'd be great. But you know, those guys go through a lot, and just like you say, as small as that may seem to you or I, the fact that it changed that guy's life, gave him something to live for. Man, these guys are hanging by a thread. They've gone through so much, and so to take the time. And I've always deeply appreciated that. I try to carry that on. It inspired me to be more intentional about taking our veterans and spending time on the water or in the woods. It was real inspiring. And that was the foundation of our friendship. I mean, that is when we really got to know one another. And that is what impressed me about Spook Spann. I mean, I know you're one of the biggest, most aggressive big buck hunters in the world, but you do everything. Spook, everything. I remember when we met up there, you had a gym and a basketball goal, and I believe you could have played in the NBA. I've never seen anybody more aggressive, hit more three-point shots. Stephen Curry may have been a little bit jealous. You was knocking them three-pointers down, looked like Stephen Curry out there, and so incredibly aggressive. I mean, you played that basketball with the same intensity that you deer hunt or turkey hunt or fish or anything else you do, man. You were zeroed in. Your eyes were rolled back. You were glassed over, man. You didn't do nothing but look at that goal. But I mean, you made more three-point shots.
Yeah, was you there when I beat Brad Miller?
No, but I heard all about it. I heard it from both sides.
Well,
he killed it.
I don't know what was said on the other side, but I know that the crowd went silent when I hit the last shot. That's all I know. He had trash talked me for days, and you know, here's a guy 6'10", 6'11", playing in the NBA. He played on the U.S. Olympic team. You know, was an all-star, and he was actually at hunting with us and leaving there, driving straight to Sacramento to start the season with the Sacramento Kings. And so John and Gina Brunson had brought him, and they had said, "Yeah, you know, we want you to play Spook a game of basketball. You know, he thinks he's really good. We want you just to blow him up, you know, and really, really kick his butt."
That backfired.
And, you know, what they didn't know is I went in there about 3 days before. I've been practicing, son. I wasn't going to I wasn't going to embarrass myself. I got ready, and he's so big, I'd pull him outside, and then if he came all the way out, I'd go by him and score, and if he stayed in, I'd just shoot 3-pointers. I toasted him pretty good. When I hit that last shot, it just went dead silent in there. There was about 30 people there, 3 or 4 cameras rolling. It was one of the highlights of my life. I was just eating it up. But the coolest part of the whole thing was my son was there. And Coleman was about 10 years old. And when I walked over to him, he looked up at me, and 3 or 4 people looked up just as serious. He said, "Dad, I knew you was going to beat him." That was just like, that was the pinnacle.
Drop the mic. I'm done.
Yeah, I just dropped the mic after that. It was priceless.
That's awesome.
Did you want to play in the NBA?
What's that?
Did you really want to play in the NBA? I mean, you played like you were practicing, getting ready to try out for an NBA position or a team. Or
really did. I didn't. I wished I'd have went and tried out. Truthfully, you know what happens. I mean, I got out of college. I was working with Dad, and me and Marty had gotten serious, and I really, truthfully, love them to death. Had great parents, but they weren't. My mom wanted me. My parents thought that going to college or leaving home was like the next. My mom was super religious, just a super strong Christian, and all that was just the first step to meeting the devil in her mind. She wanted just conservative hometown. She wanted me to stay at home. And so, but me and Marty had gotten real serious. And, at that time I started thinking about making money and spending, really I needed to spend like a few months, 6 or 8 months just training before I would go to do that. And I just really didn't have anybody's support outside of just my own heart, And so I didn't, but I would have liked to. I've always thought that I was better than some of the guys that played back then. But, I also love to hunt a lot too.
From a novice, I know very little about basketball, but just watching you run up and down that court and make those 3-point shots and go in around guys much taller than you and make a layup and make them look silly. There wasn't any way I was going to play you. I can tell you that. I mean, you just smoked everybody in the. You didn't miss, man. You did not miss. Every shot you shot, it didn't matter if it was a layup or if it was the downtown 3-pointer. You was knocking them down. It was very, very impressive from my standpoint.
I appreciate it. I was really before my time. I mimicked my game after Pistol Pete Maravich, and that was a style that just was somewhat unaccepted for the most part. Because all your coaches were old-fashioned, conservative coaches, and
right.
that wide open, behind the back, between the leg, behind the head passes and all that stuff really drove a lot of those coaches wild. And then, we still lived in an era where it was a postman's game. You were always trying to get it inside of the postman where, and I asked Marty, when Steph Curry came on the scene and really started, I was like, that's the way that's what I like right there. That's what I live for, was to play like that. But it was hard to find somebody that would turn you loose and let you play, and I asked Marty one time, I said, who's he remind you of? And she's like, well, he plays like you did, and,
I say the same thing.
Curry had 55 last night, by the way. So,
Lord.
Yeah, I know, right? He's 37. He had 55 last night. Wow. But anyways, I can't complain about my life, having blessed to have a wife like Marty, somebody that as good a person as she is, that puts up with me and all my hunting and things I love to do. Has been a true blessing. So,
well, and Hank, if you look behind Spook's shoulder, you can see he's had a pretty successful career in the hunting industry as well. It's pretty amazing looking at all those deer in the back.
I've put my hands on quite a few of those. They're very impressive. It's awesome, all the big deer. But, Spook, really and truly, it wouldn't have mattered what you did, the intensity level that you attack life, whether it was on the basketball court or whether it was hunting a turkey or catching a fish or hunting a deer. You just, I call you a circus guy because you're intense. And
Yeah.
so it's a very aggressive approach to hunting that a lot of people don't even understand. I mean, you're on the telephone, you're calling people, you're networking, you're looking for big deer all over the country. It's amazing. And everybody looks at the trophies that are mounted behind you, but nobody really realizes all the blood, sweat, and tears that goes into that, and the countless number of hours sitting in a tree or on a ground blind or in a ground blind. And there is so much to that. And I've played that game a little myself, and I know how hard that is. And it's very time consuming, and it takes patience, and you got to be ready at the drop of a hat. And you be in Kansas and the wind blowing 30 miles an hour, and it'd be 8 degrees, or be in Saskatchewan, Canada, and it's 20 below zero. I've done all that. And I have a deep appreciation for all those big bucks, and they don't just show up. It takes a lot of effort to make it happen.
Appreciate it. I really do, especially coming from you. And you're right. You know it. You've done it. You've experienced. So has Brian. You have an appreciation for it. People that always giving me a hard way to go, I don't think they can actually mentally comprehend how much time has been invested. And like you said, a lot of it's networking. A lot of the success comes not while you're hunting. It's the 8 months before you get to hunting season. And, just staying in contact with all the people that I know that are constantly trying to help me find a big deer, and then making the plans. And then there again, my family, putting up with me being gone has been, a blessing. But it's like the same way you are with your bass fishing. I mean, you've been ultra successful in the bass fishing world. Well, that just didn't happen by accident. That happened with an enormous amount of, practice and research and knowledge that you gain from experience to make that happen. And that's what separates certain people from other things, whether that's Steph Curry in basketball. There's nobody that's practiced more shots in the history of mankind than Steph has. And so whatever it is that, somebody's successful at, it just takes an enormous amount. It's like Levi shooting a bow. Levi is extremely successful because he shot a gazillion arrows and has practiced probably more than anybody in the history of archery world. And that's just regardless of what it is, that's what it takes. And my dad was a lot like that. My dad approached bass fishing like that. He didn't ever go pro, but he should have, because he loved it that much and he was that good at it. And my dad was also like that about quail hunting, believe it or not. Daddy had to have the best dogs, and we chased quail like they were Boone and Crockett's, And so I got that pretty honest from Dad. He was pretty intense also when he was younger.
Yeah, I got to spend a week with him. He came down. We hunted at Honey Break. We were deer hunting down in Mississippi or Louisiana, and I spent a week with Denny Spann, and he was as cool a guy, humble. One of these guys you just want to sit around the campfire and you don't want to break it up. We talked about quail hunting. We talked about deer hunting. We talked about bass fishing. And I was amazed. See, I didn't know. I knew he was there shooting television for one of your episodes, and I didn't know much about your dad. And boy, after that second day, we started interacting and having conversations. And the one thing that I took away is he had an incredible passion for the outdoors. But boy, he loved his boy. Now, I'm going to tell you, Spook was number one in your dad's eyes, and he loved you to death. But we had such a great time, and we saw a lot of deer. He killed a deer, and we just had some incredible fellowship. I heard a lot of Spook stories. I heard a lot of spankings you got when you were little. I told him, I said, I don't know how many.
About that.
Oh, yeah. I said, I don't know how many spankings
that was the perfect child.
Yeah, I said, I don't know how many spankings you gave him, but it wasn't enough. Well, it
Well,
was good times.
he always put that off on mom. He might talk a good game, but he was a softy. I don't ever remember him spanking me. Mom, he always put it off on mom. Yeah.
Well, it
What a
wasn't
great
enough.
story.
They need to slow you down.
Yeah. What a
But
great story.
I know you miss him. I tell you, that's a
Yeah,
tough
yeah, we
thing.
do. It's just part of life, but yeah, I miss him a lot. He
But
would
I can
love to
see
be
where
on
you
here now telling some of those bad stories about me.
I can see where you got your intensity, and I see where you got your passion for the outdoors because he sure had
Yeah.
it.
Well, growing up, Dad obviously was a sawmiller and a lumberman, and bought and sold timber. So we were in the woods all the time for something. And as a little kid, I was like any other. I mean, obviously back then we didn't have much on TV. We didn't have cell phones or computers. So I wanted to go with Dad all the time. I wanted to go hunting with him. I wanted to go fishing with him. I wanted to go look at timber with him. I wanted to go to the work. I wanted to go up to the sawmill, and Dad bought and sold some land, and he would buy a farm and get the bulldozer and clean it up. And we had a tractor and a disc, and I witnessed and watched and helped with all these things when I was just a little kid. So, I learned a lot that at the time I didn't realize I was learning about a
Sure.
lot of different things, from business to hunting to, a lot of different things. And so it was awesome, growing up in that atmosphere and being in the woods all the time. Plus, I learned a lot about deer and, you know, looking at under oak trees where deer would eat and finding rubs and scrapes, and Dad telling me all these different things about hunting. And I was seeing this at 7, 8, 9, 10 years old. And of course I couldn't wait till, I was fishing with an Ambassador reel when I was 8, I started shooting a Browning light 12 shotgun with 2 3/4 inch shells at doves and quail when I was 12, you know. And so, I just was grew up with all that and took it for granted at the time, but it was learning a lot and shooting all the time, shooting guns, shooting 22s, 250s, shooting groundhogs, squirrels, slipping up on them. We hunted squirrels and groundhogs like they were Boone and Crockett's. Just after everything all the time. And I'd throw rocks at birds waiting at the mailbox for the school bus, just whatever I could do to, you know, get after something. That's what I did. And the only thing that I ever did that I actually liked more than that was playing basketball, which is, hard for a lot of people. And that's where that passion came from. I don't know what in the world got into my blood about watching a silly ball go through a hoop, but it just,
It did.
it was magical to me. And, there was not anything more enjoyable than walking in a gym and being a 6'2" white guy that nobody even paid any attention to, and walking out with 40 and them coming up and shaking your hands like, and that was awesome. I get chills just talking about it. It was priceless. And I've always said, if being in heaven is anything, and I know it's going to be better, but if being in heaven is better than being in the zone when you're playing ball, it's going to be incredible. And we know it's going to be better. So it's when I'm playing ball and I'm in the zone, or when I draw the arrow on the buck, I just go into a place that's undescribable. I rarely ever remember flicking my wrist or pulling the trigger. You just go to a place where it's kind of like, I don't even know how to explain it. So yeah, I know heaven's going to be better. And so it's going to be awesome.
I agree with that. And I've watched you in the zone. I've watched you in the zone, both hunting and on the basketball court. So I know exactly what you're talking about. And it
I appreciate it.
is so awesome, though, to hear you talk about what was so important to you as a kid, that you went with your dad on the bulldozer clearing land or looking at timber or to the sawmill. Foundation in which you built your passion for the outdoors came from your dad. And I think
Yeah,
back,
yeah,
Spook, you know my boys well. And when I bought my farm back in 1985, we would come down and have work days and pick up rocks
yeah,
out of the fields
yeah,
where we could put in food plots. And we look back now and you think, well, you ought not make those boys down there. Those rocks, that could have hurt their back, or it was hot. Y'all went down there in the summertime and you worked those little boys. I look back now, and of course Hank Jr.'s 50, and Bill and Ben are 48, and some of the best times we ever had was picking up rocks. You know,
yeah,
they talk about that today and how that
yeah,
Yep.
shaped them and built the foundation to have the passion for the outdoors, picking up rocks. You know,
yeah.
it's pretty
That's
awesome at the
exactly right. Hey,
sawmill.
Hank, look at this picture, right? Can you see this picture? That's
Oh yeah,
me when
yeah.
I'm about 7 or 8, and Dad had been to Kentucky Lake bass fishing that day, and he and his partner had worn them out. So that was a picture in the right around 1970 of
Wow.
2 limits of bass that he and his buddy caught.
Hey, and
That's awesome.
that was in an era that not a lot of people knew how to catch those big bass. So your dad was ahead of the game for sure.
Yeah, he and his partner were really good. I remember him telling about there was going to be a Bassmasters event at Kentucky Lake, and a local guy tried to pay my dad and his partner's way into the fee or whatever it was to get into the tournament, and they didn't do it. And I believe the 2-day winning weight, if I'm remembering correctly, was 25, 26 pounds. And Daddy and his partner went on that Saturday and call. I think their bag for that one day was 32 pounds or something, And they just, but Dad, we fish tournaments, we fish local tournaments, but you know what, Dad, he didn't like it. We won a lot of them, but he said, for him, it took away he loved it so much that he said, he realized in the day of the tournament he was more worried about winning than he was just enjoying the fishing. And he worked so hard during the week, he just wanted to enjoy the day fishing rather than having to absorb the pressure of thinking that we had to win, which is the way we both thought about things. And so he couldn't relax because we was running from one spot to the next so hard trying to win that tournament. But anyways, we had a lot of good times on the water and in the woods. So he was definitely the one that fueled my passion and desire to
Well,
work so
and
hard.
and Spook, you've shared some of those, and I love that. And Hank, the fact that you had your boys do those things, I love hearing it. I grew up on a cattle ranch here in Florida, and I mean, I was on a horse before 10, working cows, hunting, and doing things. And same thing. My dad was a hard man, but you look back and appreciate some of those things that help shape you. And, I love to hear that you had your boys do that. And they probably wouldn't trade it for anything in this world to have those experiences. And hopefully, and I try to share some of that with my boys. And so it's, I think, a lost generation of, that hard work and discipline and appreciation helps shape you in life. And so it's a beautiful thing that we all get to experience.
Hank he's been a great dad because his boys are some of the finest men on the planet. I love them. You know them. Brian
Well,
knows them. And so
yep, I've spent
they
time with
are
them
the
too.
best. Yeah.
Yep.
No, I said I am proud of my boys. They have all and my daughter as well. I got 20 grandkids now. So Hank
Wow.
Jr.'s oldest son, Boone, he came down and fished with me last week. We had a ball. He loves it, man.
I saw your picture. Yeah.
That's awesome.
He's ate up with it, man. It's so much fun to be able to hang out with grandkids. So I'm very, very blessed. I've got 20, so it's pretty awesome.
Wow. That's crazy.
I think Boone and Cade both, that's both Hank Jr.'s boys. I think they have got it pretty bad. My son Ben, he tried to fish professionally for a while. Great, great fisherman. He just could never put the strategies together. Fish would change and he would get so intense on a certain method or a technique, and he wasn't able to adapt as the fish would make changes. He'd get overexcited. He just never could quite calm down. And if he would have ever got to that point, he's ADD. So he just never could quite calm down. But now just to go fishing, he'll wear you out. But to put strategy together and be able to adapt and change as the fish change during the competition, he just couldn't quite get it. So he fished for about 4 years on the FLW circuit. And I wouldn't be surprised if Boone, Hank Jr.'s oldest son, I wouldn't be surprised if he started fishing the tournaments and doing well. Boone, by the way, he wins everything in his school where they have rifle, shotgun, and bow competition. He's won archery just about every event. He can shoot a rifle like way better than I can. He's very accomplished, and he's calm. He's just calm. He's not hyper at all. He's just laid back, and the same way fishing is pretty impressive. So I think if he ever got on the pro circuit, he would do well. He would do well.
That's awesome.
I love hearing that. And you've obviously are incredibly proud of all of your grandchildren and children. And what a great honor for you to see, each of them take their own path, but, especially if they want to follow in some of those footsteps. And what great for them to be able to have someone like yourself to lean on and pull some experience from. Hank, I got a question for you. You obviously, as Spook said, had an amazing career fishing, won a lot of tournaments, very successful. Had you been hunting during that same time and had the same passion and love for hunting during that time, or did you start, really getting more involved in the hunting later in your life or later in your career?
When I love duck hunting, and duck hunting worked out because when I was fishing my career, mostly the tournaments started in February and they would end in October or November. So you had December and January, and it fit right into waterfowl. I stayed away from deer hunting. I did a little bit of it. And in the middle of my career, I really got hooked on archery and deer hunting. It hurt me bad. Turkey hunting cost me the last year in 1989. I won the Bassmaster Classic, and I had a 44-pound lead in Angler of the Year with 2 tournaments left. And I promised my son Timmy I'd take him turkey hunting. Well, the only time I had to practice Lake Livingston in Texas, was in turkey season when I promised to take my son. So I forewent going to Livingston. I had a 44-pound lead. The first day I knocked my lower unit off trying to navigate through the jungle and didn't make the weigh-in. Second day, I had my partners navigate through the same area. He knocked his lower unit off. So for the first 2 days, I zeroed. No weigh-in. Didn't make it to the weigh-in. And I ended up losing Angler of the Year by 6 pounds. Had I not been turkey hunting, I think I would have been the first angler to win Angler of the Year and the Bassmaster Classic in the same year. Now, I was the first angler to ever win both the Classic and Angler of the Year, but not in the same year. But had I not been turkey hunting, I would have probably ended up winning both Angler of the Year and the Classic in the same year, which would have been pretty neat. But
awesome.
I wouldn't trade that now looking back. My son, Timmy, was 10 years old, and it was a very special time. But hunting, I tried to stay away from it as much as I could, because bass fishing on a competitive level, when you fish against those guys that are so incredibly good, you gotta give it 100%, man. You can't hold nothing back. And hunting was a big distraction. And it was one of the reasons I wanted to retire. I wanted to spend time with my boys, number one. That was the first reason I retired at 36 years old. And the reason I wanted to was to spend time with my boys, but also I wanted to go hunting, and I never got to hunt. And the tournaments then started. We had December tournaments and November tournaments. So it was really taken away from hunting. So I didn't hunt as much early on, but later on I really got into it more and more and more.
Okay. Well, in the early days, I grew up in Kissimmee on Lake Toho. So I don't know if you ever had any tournaments back in the day in Central Florida on East or West Lake Toho at all. But back then, it was a pretty dang good bass lake.
I finished second there in 88. And sure won it. I led the tournament the first 2 days, and then I didn't do well the last day. And Ken Cook from Oklahoma ended up beat me by 5 ounces. But
I should
have won that tournament. I didn't do
So,
well the
all right,
last
so
day.
you know it well. And then have you fished the Taylor Creek Reserve out here on Deseret Ranch ever
No, I
before?
haven't. I have not. I would like
If you
to,
want
but
to, let me know. That's part of our lease, so I fish there quite a bit.
okay, I'd love that. I'll take that invitation. Any place I can go catch a big fish, I want to go.
Next spring, and we'll go fishing.
Awesome. That was awesome. I tried to hook up and go fishing with
You're,
Spook just a couple of weeks ago, and our schedule didn't work out. But Spook caught some big giant bass. He probably don't want to talk much about it, but he had one I know it was over 13, and yeah, he had like 4. He may not want to talk about this. He wants to keep this private. But
I don't
think
mind talking about it. I'm sticking.
Okay.
It was
All right.
awesome.
He had 4 double-digit fish in a 2-day fishing trip. So, and the biggest was 13 something. So, pretty
Where
impressive
was
for
this
a
at?
deer hunter. All down, we can't tell
Don't
that.
tell him
Spook.
where
Don't tell
don't tell him
this
where it was at, Hank.
It was in Florida.
It was
I
in
stand
Florida.
corrected. I should
It
not
was
have
in
asked that.
Florida.
It was in Florida. Okay. All right.
It
I
was
like that.
man, I hope you get to go again. He caught 2 big ones yesterday, and
Oh, he did?
yeah, the weather's warmed up now, and they've moved back up on their spots, so they're back up on them.
Were you shiner fishing or were you
Fishing
Artificial.
for
artificial?
on bed, putting a big worm or a big grub or
Yeah.
something up
Okay.
on the bed, waiting for them
Yeah.
to get it.
It's a
And
great time of year for that here in Florida.
yeah, it was incredible. I was just thinking about Dad, most of the time,
Sure.
just because he loved it. So we used to go to Central Florida every year shiner fishing for big bass, and Dad just loved it. I mean, I did too, but Dad was just on another level. He loved it, and I would have loved to have had somebody like this guy to fish with, trying to catch those really big ones, like that. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. I love it. I can't wait to get back down there and do it again. And then, how's our plans for that rock fishing trip, Hank?
Coming along. He's giving me a few dates. I'll go over that with you. I'm not sure what they are. I got them on my phone, but
All
he
right,
sent me
cool.
a couple of dates. And
Yeah, awesome.
you talk about your guide, the man you met where you caught your big fish.
Yeah.
I call him Big Bass Man Ran.
Yeah.
Bass Man Ran, Big Bass Man Ran, but he's got that same level of intensity that
He does.
you have
He
on
really
the
does.
basketball court or hunting a big deer. He is so involved, and he goes the extra mile to figure things out, and he just applies himself 100%. It is so cool to hang out with people like that. You'll notice that when we go striper fishing with Bo Rice. Bo is a guy that guides and catches 50-pound stripers. They caught one that weighed 60 pounds, which for years and years and years, the world record was 55 pounds. So, I mean, like for 30 years, Tiny Lund, the race car driver, caught one at Santee Cooper that weighed 55 pounds, and that was the world record forever. Bo, 3 years ago, they caught one that weighed 60 pounds, and that's incredible. But he catches so many 45 and 50-pound stripers, but he's so intense, just like Rand is about catching those big bass. And Rand's not only in Florida, he goes to Texas and goes to a lot of places.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, so Big Bass Man Rand, he's impressive, and he's just like you are, Spook, about hunting a big deer. He is just as intense. He's just as dedicated, and he does his homework just like you do 8 or 9 months before the season ever comes in. He's calling these guys at Fork and different places in Texas and figuring out where these big fish are being caught. And it's amazing how much fun it is to fish with a guy that is so dedicated and put forth that effort. And I know you guys together, I'd have loved to have been in that boat. There was some energy going on, I guarantee you. And he said when you caught that 13-pounder, you were so emotional because of your dad. And I wish your dad could have been there. That would have been really exciting.
Yeah. Yeah, it was awesome.
Well, that's I love those big stories. Hank, can you think of your career? There's got to be 1 or 2 moments on the tour that just stick out, that just were so. Maybe it was on the amazing upside, or even on the downside of something that just will stick with you forever.
You go through life and you set all these goals and you have a quest to do this and you have all these dreams and you want I always wanted to win. And anytime I didn't win was whoever won beat me at my best, because I gave everything I had every tournament. And I wanted to be the first guy to win what they call the Grand Slam, which is every event that Bass had: a qualifying tournament, Bass Angler of the Year, Bassmaster Classic, and a Super Bass tournament. Well, I had never won the Super Bass tournament. So I had won 3 of the 4, and the Super Bass tournament was on Lake Lanier right out of Atlanta, Georgia, this particular
Lived
year.
there for 20 years.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Great lake. I like Lanier.
Yep.
It's not exactly my style of fishing, but it really, that I fish anyway and anywhere and try to win everywhere. And I really wanted to be the first guy to win that Grand Slam. And I had a good shot at it. Gary Klein jumped out in the lead. And the last day I caught the biggest string of the tournament and came in and thought I had it won, because Gary didn't catch them real good. But it turned out he beat me by 1 ounce. He had 58.11. I had 58.10.
Oh my
God. I was sick. But the very next year, the Super Bass tournament was on the St. Johns River in Florida. And the last day of that tournament, I was leading it. It was a 4-day event, and I was leading the tournament. I led it the first day. I fell out of the lead the second day. I took the lead back over the third day, and I had a pretty good lead, but for Florida, not a great lead. I had an 8-pound lead going in the last day. And I had Larry Lazant, a great guy from Port Charlotte, Florida, fished tournaments for years and years. And I had Larry for a partner. And in practice, I had gone a long way from where my primary spot was, and there was one cypress tree, and I had caught about I had about a 9-pound bass hit a spinnerbait that I had the hook bent shut in practice. And so I had Larry for a partner, and I caught me about 23 or 24 pounds, and I said, Larry, I got one tree 6 miles, 7 miles from here, so it's going to be about a 13 or 14-mile round trip, and all I want to do is make one cast. And I know it's not fair to you to ask you to allow me to do that, but if you will allow me to do that, I'll come back, I'll give you the front of the boat, and I'll sit down in the back of the boat and let you have at it the rest of the day. He said, I'm in, go for it. So I went, and this particular cypress tree was at the mouth of a little creek between 2 piers, and there was a lady on the boat dock, and I went around that boat dock, and Larry, no pressure, he didn't get up there and fish. He allowed me to do it, and I flicked that spinnerbait and ran it by that cypress tree, and I dropped it down, and that big fish ate it. And when I set the hook, jumped out of the water, it was over 9 pounds, and I fought and got that fish in the boat, and I screamed like a schoolgirl, because I knew that was the nail in the coffin. I knew I had just won the Super Bass. I knew that I was the first Grand Slam winner, and I screamed. And that woman on the boat dock, she said, do you get that excited every time you catch a fish? I said, ma'am, that fish just won me $100,000. And she screamed louder than I did. She said, oh, you're in that derby. We've been watching that on the news. I said, well, you watch it tonight, because you're going to see the winner right here. And of course, it worked out. I won that tournament. So that was an exciting moment in tournament fishing.
Oh, but see, that's what, when you talk about me being aggressive, or that, intense, to me, that's the same example. And that's why you've been so successful. It's because those are the chances you have to take if you want to reach that ultimate goal. And I dare to say that there's another person in the tournament that would have went 13 miles round trip to make, one cast after that particular fish. And, that's, to me, and I remember something else that you told somebody one time, Hank, I don't know if you remember this. We were having a conversation with somebody, and I don't even remember who it was, and we were talking about marginal shots with a bow. How do you decide? Are you going to take a quarter into you shot, or the angles or different things, and at certain distances, and different things like that. And you and I are a lot of the same, I feel like, because we feel like your chances are so few that when you get one, you got to take what you're given, And I remember somebody saying something about, oh, I would never take that shot. And Hank just as calmly and nicely said, well, you've obviously not spent as much time out there freezing to death, and, went through a long line of things that he said, because when I get a chance, I'm taking it, and that just sunk in my heart. I was like, that's the way I feel about it myself. But a lot of people, didn't, but I just love that answer that Hank gave that day about you obviously haven't sit out there the length of time and, suffered like I have, or you would take that shot. And
it goes with having great equipment, and this is from a unbiased. So you introduced me to the Swacker, and I started shooting Swackers too. And you, speaking of shots that are marginal or just tough shots, I can tell you, Hank, and I've told this to Spook, whether it's elk, turkeys, hogs, gators, I have had less than perfect shots, and that Swacker broadhead has come through for me over and over again, and saved my day of being able to get that animal even in a less than perfect shot, just because. And that's years and years of experience, and that Spook introduced me to. So I agree, but also having confidence in your equipment, it makes a big difference too.
I have to tell you my Swacker story. I was at Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, working the outdoor show, and these two guys came up to me and they said, "This is Jim. He killed two deer this year with that Swacker broadhead." And he said they weren't really great shots, but he said those deer, man, that ate them up. And he said, "But I'm switching to Swacker." He said, "I've been shooting that slip cam broadhead, and man, I've lost 4 or 5 deer that I didn't feel like I should have lost." And he said, "I'm going to start shooting Swacker broadheads." And he said, I want you to know it's because of you." I said, "Okay, well, good. Thank you." He said, "Because I've been watching your show, and you guys have been killing some great deer. You've killed some awesome deer, and they hadn't gone 100 yards or even that far. And you hadn't made a good shot yet." So I said, "Well, thank you." I think that's true. It's a compensator. We talked about Levi Morgan. Man, he makes good shots. I make marginal shots
he
every
could
time.
kill them with field tips. Yeah.
I mean, it's something.
Yeah.
Well, I remember Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, when you were at Big Buck one year, you remember you shot about a 160-inch 10-pointer at like almost 40 yards, quartering to you, and the arrow went in here and came out the hind quarter on the opposite side, passed through. Deer didn't go 30 yards. And I mean, for you to get a quartering to you pass through the opposite side back hip, like, that's all I need to see. That's the last time I ever shot Thunderhead. It was, I had swag. You may have had some you give me that night. I don't remember, but I never shot anything but Swacker since, and I still got a few packs in my room. I usually don't shoot, a couple of years. Still got several.
Levi, you talked about Levi Morgan, who is the world's greatest archer, in my opinion. It's amazing. He came down to shoot a Swacker commercial, and my son Billy and Hank Jr. set up cameras, and they were going to video him. And so they got out there and set the target at about 73 yards, and they practiced and practiced and practiced before he got there. So Levi comes rolling up, and he said, "What we going to do?" Hank Jr. said, "We're going to shoot that target. We got a high-speed camera set up in the middle. We got this camera set up here for you, and we got a camera set up on the target. And we want you to shoot a field point, a Swacker, a field point, a Swacker, a field point, a Swacker. We're going to shoot 6 arrows, 3 with field point and 3 with Swacker." Levi said, "Okay, is that all I need to do?" He said, "That's all you need to do." Hank Jr. and Billy sitting there, they got him set up, and Levi says, "How far is it?" And they said, "We're not sure." It was 73 yards. They knew exactly how far. They lied. And he said, "Okay, all right." And Levi looked down and he said, "Okay, all right. Are y'all ready?" He said, "Yeah, we're ready." And now they got their bows out there sitting beside the truck in the case. They've been out there practicing for about 2 hours. And they're both pretty good archers. So Levi shoots one field point, 10 rings it, shoots a Swacker, 10 rings it, shoots a field point, 10 rings it, shoots a Swacker, 10 rings it, shoots a field point, 10 rings it. He shoots 6 arrows. They're all in there wadded up together. He's done cut fletching off, and they're all in the 10 ring. And Billy and Hank's kicking them bows up under the truck. Boy, he don't want to see. So they didn't even shoot, man. They hid those bows. They said, "Well, that's all we need, buddy."
Yep. No, we didn't bring our bows.
No.
That's funny. Yeah, he's tremendous for sure.
Yeah, he shut them down.
That's
But he's a
hilarious.
great he's a
Well,
great hunter as well.
Yeah.
Well, the thing, and I do watch a lot of Levi's stuff, and I think what you do appreciate about him is that he does put a lot of work, and he doesn't take it for granted. I mean, the guy shoots an amazing arrow, and what Spook said earlier is it's the practice. I mean, he puts in the work, and I'm sure he's got some natural ability, but that doesn't come without the practice and the consistency that you have to appreciate when you see some of those shots that he does make.
Yeah, and it's fun to watch. He's taught me a lot. I've learned a lot. I've never had great form. I started out. People say practice makes perfect. Perfect practice makes perfect. And when you get in the habit of practicing and get a routine, and you get acclimated to just consistently shooting with bad form, you create a lot of bad habits. And man, I started out when I was 17, 18 years old with the old wheel bows. I had a Jennings TriStar 5-wheel, and a lot of bad habits, and I shoot in repetition. So you got to try to break those bad habits. So Levi's tried to help me, and he has helped me a lot break some of them, but I still got a lot of them.
Yeah, it's the same with me. I have a lot of bad habits. I started shooting when I was 13. I didn't have anybody to show me or teach me anything. I just started shooting fingers, and then went to, later in years, went to, a peep sight and a kisser button and a release. But I never had anybody. The first person that ever showed me anything about shooting a bow was Pete Shepley, and that was all the way shoot. I don't know. I was in my 40s by then, but so I was already ingrained in bad habits. But it's just mainly. But he did help me a lot. But yeah, back then when we first started bow hunting, there were I don't even know if there was such thing as a tournament back then. It's been
No,
so
I
long
doubt it
ago.
was.
What year did you start bow hunting, Hank?
Probably about 78, 77, somewhere along in that era. It's when I first killed my
Gotcha.
first deer with a bow. It was probably about 77.
That's very close to the same for me. Yeah, it's very close to the same. I mean, there's not very many people that I can think of or that I know that started bow hunting that long ago. I mean, you got a few people, and you had Barry and Gene Winsel and some guys like that from around the country, probably Ted and different ones, but there just weren't many. There weren't that many bow hunters in the 70s.
I have gone back now, Spook. I'm shooting a longbow. I've been shooting a
Oh,
longbow
are you?
for,
Yeah.
yeah, I've
Nice.
been doing that now for 3 years, and I'm the world's greatest sportsman. I fire warning shots.
Yeah.
Yep.
You could
You're a
fall
true
under.
conservationist.
You
You're
could fall
conserving the
under the.
animals and not killing them.
Yeah, you could fall under the hunting. You could fall under the heading of becoming somewhat of a tree hugger if you have gone to shooting a longbow.
Yeah, I'm in that. But I don't ever have to drag a deer. I don't ever have to clean one. I've always got my tags at the
Yeah,
end of the year.
I will admit that at this point in my career, I don't feel as though every deer has to be killed with a bow. I just really want to have fun. And really, when I'm trying to kill a really big one, we're just going to whatever weapon fits the circumstance. But I mean, I still love to bow hunt, but like I'm going to Canada this year on a deer hunt, and I mean I'm probably gonna muzzle load or a rifle hunt just because I'm after a particular buck, and it's gonna be difficult. I think.
Well, Hank, I've got a story to pick on myself about Swacker and talking about Levi and some tips and learning. So when I started, working with your boys at Swacker when we were doing our TV show a number of years ago, you had just come out with the 3-blade Swacker. So I was doing one of my first shows of the Chronicles TV, and I was going to be going hunting a big muley, so a 200+ inch velvet muley in Colorado. Hank, deer of a lifetime. So I'm going to be, shooting this 3-blade for the first time, and I'm so excited. I told Hank or Spook this story. I was like, man, I'm going to get in good with Swacker. They're going to love me. I'm going to shoot this big mule deer, and it's going to be awesome. So we're up on the hill day one, and this deer is an absolute giant. It's 60 yards downhill. He's with the bachelor group of bucks. We're filming it, and I draw, and Hank, I shoot right over his back. And I watch a 200-inch velvet muley run off, and I almost vomit on camera. And what I failed to do was, when you're shooting downhill like that, you've got to aim a little bit lower than you normally would, especially if the deer's going to duck, and he was looking right at me. And so from that moment on, I was devastated for several reasons. I'd missed the biggest deer of my life and blew an opportunity, what I thought was going to be to shoot one of the first big animals with that 3-blade. It happens, and I have to laugh at myself because otherwise I get too depressed.
I've been there. I got the T-shirt, man. That's a bad deal. I've shot over a bunch of them, so it hurts.
It does hurt, but it just, you got to appreciate it. I will have to say, as much as it does hurt, and I'd love to be looking at that animal every day, to see an animal of that magnitude eye to eye is special. And they don't come around a lot, and just appreciating that world class of an animal, no matter if it's a mule deer, an elk, a whitetail, whatever. It's a special moment in itself.
There's no doubt about that. And to be able to appreciate that is important. And hey, you'll remember that deer forever. If you'd have killed it, it'll get old, but you'll remember that deer forever and ever and ever.
Hank, I've got a question for you. I'll put you on the spot a little bit right here. So let's say it's spring or your favorite time of year to bass fish, and they are just on fire. It's also the choice of, it's the Midwest, the bucks are rutting hard, weather's perfect, fronts come in, and it's just, the conditions are just amazing. Are you heading to the boat ramp, or are you heading to the deer stand?
That question is like asking you with 2 children, which one do you love the most? Spook, do you love your daughter more,
Yes, sir,
or do you love your son more? How can you answer that?
I know.
I got in a lot of trouble. Spook said earlier, the only reason I fish is to make enough money to go hunting. And I got in a lot of trouble with my fishing sponsors over that. So I tell people now, if it's November, I'd rather be hunting. If it's June, I'd rather be fishing. That's where I'm going to leave
There you go.
There you go.
All right, fair enough.
Yeah, the main thing that I love about, there's so many things about Hank that I appreciate and love. And the fact that he's a Christian, he spends a lot of time on the weekends going and speaking to people at wild game dinners, at churches and different things. And it's just, really, when it's all said and done, that's one of, if not the most important thing we can do. Raising a family of like he has, it's just, I don't know his daughter, but I know his boys, and I'm sure she's fantastic because they are awesome. They were so nice to Dad when they hunted together down in Louisiana. Hank's always been so supportive of me, even when things weren't going too well for me. The one person I could count on in life and in the industry was Hank. So all that is just, I didn't, there's not even enough words for me to express how appreciative I am for that. But the thing that I enjoy the most about Hank, outside of the obvious qualities, is just the storytelling. Hank has the best stories, and we could literally sit here until this time tomorrow listening to some of the funniest stories, and being able to have the pleasure to sit around on several different occasions and listen to Hank's stories about Dale Earnhardt and Neil Bonnet and them racing trucks on the ranches in Texas and wrecking each other and all that stuff is just priceless, and a lot of the racing stories. And then, some of the more serious stories about, Catfish and his opportunity to take over a particular Winston Cup car back in the day, and turning down the opportunity because of certain moral values that he learned and got from Hank, those kind of things, just those stories. He's done so much in the hunting world, in the fishing world. The stories are endless, and so it's just, I never forget, we were in Alabama hunting with Mike Eubanks years ago, and my cameraman was there and we were filming, and I think Hank was filming too. And Hank's telling these stories and the camera was sitting there. I thought that my cameraman was recording it, and Hank tells about 10 of the most awesome stories at the dinner table that night. And that night I was like, "You got all that on camera?" He's like, "Well, no, I didn't have the camera on." I was like, "Oh my gosh." I was just sick because he didn't have that on video. So at some point, maybe we do this in Florida, turkey hunting and fishing. I don't know, but at some point,
Yep.
I got to get Hank back, us hunting or fishing together, and get some of those stories because on camera, but it's because he's so funny, and that's what makes him such a good speaker too. Is just he's just really good at it, and he's been in front of the camera a lot in his life, so he's perfectly comfortable and it doesn't bother him. But if mainly I'm just real appreciative to be able to call him my friend and get to hunt together and fish together and knowing his boys, and they're so awesome. And this past year, some may or may not know it, Hank actually fell out of the tree and was really lucky to have not been hurt very bad other than just some bumps and bruises. And I got really upset about it, and because I didn't know at the time how bad it was. And I was trying to get in touch with the boys, and they both responded to me pretty quick and told me he was okay. And then Hank responded the next day, and I was just happy he was okay.
Yeah, man, that was a scary moment. I fell, and it was a bad fall, and I could have really gotten hurt. But it was grace. People say you were lucky. No, I wasn't lucky. It was grace. My guardian angel took care of me again. But I'm gonna tell you, Spook, I know we're out of time. You told me I talked too much, but we're out of time. Hopefully, we'll be back on your podcast again, talking about the big stripers we catch in just a couple of months.
Yeah.
So we'll share some stories in the boat catching some big stripers.
Absolutely.
Well, and I will just say, to both of you, you both have an open invite next spring. We can do it sooner, but next spring to come hunt in Osceola, go fish the reservoir, and we can invite my brother Mark too and have a great time and share some stories over a campfire and all of that. So you have that open invite. But I also just, Hank, want to say, I appreciate personally your support of the veterans. I have a dad and a brother who have done a lot, and they're my heroes and have served and done some pretty amazing things and still do to this day. So I just want to thank you for that support of our veteran community that does so much to protect us. It's been an honor and a pleasure to have you on today, and would love to invite you back.
Well, we're going to take you up on that turkey hunt and that fishing trip.
Come on.
We're going to come down. Spook and I are going to go together. We're going to kill a turkey, catch a big bass, and you'll be right there with us, and we'll tell some stories. We're going to go striper fishing. We got some big plans coming up, so it's all exciting, and I look forward to being back on, and I thank you guys so much for having me on the podcast. It's been a good time.
Thanks, Hank. Love you, man.
I love you, my buddy, and I look forward to seeing you down the road.